All right, welcome to Critical Wave Theory. This is take three, and I'm talking about a strange marketing campaign in this episode. So, by the time Ozzy Osbourne took his final bow, he had already turned his own mortality into a punchline. Not long before his death, the man born John Michael Osborne in Birmingham, England, found yet another way to blur the line between myth and marketing. This time, oddly enough, it involved iced tea. Not the rapper iced tea, but iced tea, like the beverage. And it was a specific brand. In a collaboration that only made sense because it was Ozzy, he partnered with the canned beverage company Liquid Death on a campaign that promised fans something close to eternal life. Well, not for the individual drinkers, but, for Ozzy Osbourne himself. Or at least it was a souvenir of something like eternal life. It was a marketing ploy. The campaign was called Infinite Ozzy. The pitch was simple and ridiculous in equal measure. Ozzy Osbourne is one, the ad said, but now you could recycle him forever. That's right. The company had him drink from 10 cans of their iced tea, and when he was done, the cans were sealed, preserved with traces of his saliva inside, and placed in lab style display cases. Each one was hand signed. Inside those cans, the marketing suggested, was Ozzy's DNA. They sold for $450 each, and they sold out very quickly. There was 10 of them. The implication was half joke, half science fiction. Someday, when technology and the law allowed it, fans could use the DNA to clone the Prince of Darkness himself. It was absurd, it was theatrical, and it was completely in character. If you watch the ad, you see that there's even an implication that you could use Ozzy Osbourne as a sex slave if you so desired. So it was a pretty unhinged ad campaign. And because Ozzy Osbourne had spent his entire career turning spectacle into a legend, well, it just kind of worked, you know? In 1968, in the industrial city of Birmingham, Ozzy and guitarist Tony Iommi helped form Black Sabbath, and what followed would reshape rock music. Albums like Paranoid in 1970 and Master of Reality in 1971 laid the foundation for heavy metal itself. And obviously, Sabbath had other great albums, but those are some of the main ones that come to mind. Songs like Iron Man, War Pigs, and Paranoid traded bright rock optimism for darker riffs and apocalyptic imagery. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some kind of heavy songs about at the time that the Black Sabbath thing first formed, but nothing was quite as heavy as Black Sabbath, and it sounded heavy, it sounded ominous, and it changed everything. But Ozzy's story didn't stop there. And after being fired from Black Sabbath in 1979, he launched a solo career that many originally assumed would fade quickly. Instead, it exploded. His 1980 album Blizzard of Oz introduced a new generation of fans to Ozzy songs like Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley, and he became one of rock's most improbable second acts, and really possibly heavy metal's greatest mascot, It's it's debatable, just like when you talk about who the king of rock and roll is, obviously might say Elvis was the king of rock and roll. Other people would say there were other people, who actually deserve that title. And you could say that maybe Ozzy isn't the true greatest mascot of heavy metal music, but I think there's a solid argument that he is. And across the decades, Ozzy's influence became impossible to ignore. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Black Sabbath in 2006, and years later, his solo work earned him a second induction. So, you might not be that impressed with the whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, but I guess it kind of means something a little bit, to some degree at least. And standing on stage, he kept his acceptance speech short and unmistakably Ozzy. He said, "Fucking love you guys. Well, here we are. You know what? I can't believe I'm here myself. Let me get the thank yous out of the way. I'd like to thank whoever voted me into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for my solo work. Thank you from the bottom of my heart." And that was about it. You know, he was, he didn't go on some elaborate list of people to thank. He just kept it short. And that might have been because of his health struggles at the time. By that point, his health struggles were no secret. A fall in 2019 aggravated some old spinal injuries, and in 2020, he revealed he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Still, Ozzy refused to disappear quietly. On his Sirius XM show titled Ozzy Speaks, he talked openly about trying to get back on stage. He said, "I haven't done any physical work for the last 6.5, 7 years, but by hook or by crook, I'm going to make it." And he was talking about doing one more show at the time, and he was really trying to, you know, get that show running. It was a massive hometown farewell, and it took place in Birmingham. And the event was meant to be Black Sabbath's final performance in the city where it all began, and that is indeed what it was. Ozzy described working with a trainer to rebuild his strength. "It's hard going," he said, "but I'm giving it everything I've got." And looking back now, that iced tea stunt feels a little different. It's less like a marketing gimmick and more like a final wink. I mean, sure enough, it's a little bit of both, but you know, I think most people they see that as a humorous thing, you know. And Liquid Death, they they really definitely were in on the joke. They claimed the preserved DNA could somehow someday bring Ozzy back, and the company had done similar stunts before, like selling skateboards infused with the blood of skateboarder Tony Hawk. But with Ozzy, the idea felt strangely appropriate. It wasn't quite as weird somehow. After all, this was the same performer who famously bit the head off a bat during a concert in 1982. The same man who once embodied rock's most chaotic excesses. And, you know, it's one of the reasons he is a polarizing figure. Obviously, a lot of people do love Ozzy, but, there were some chaotic moments in his biography that certainly lost him a few fans along the way, or whatever, made him new enemies, even. And the same man who later reinvented himself as a surprisingly gentle, bewildered family patriarch on the reality show The Osbournes, it's not that much of a stretch that he would do something like this. Few artists have lived as many public lives as Ozzy Osbourne. For more than 5 decades, he turned chaos into melody and excess into theater, and in the end, even as his body failed him, he found one more way to make immortality a part of the show. And interestingly enough, rock history has seen this kind of mythology before. The idea that the rock star will somehow find a way to live forever. When Motorhead frontman Lemmy Kilmister died in 2015, he made sure the legend would outlive the man. So some of his ashes were placed in 3D printed urns shaped like his signature hat, and others were sealed inside bullets and sent to close friends. I know he's technically not a rock star per se, but Hunter S. Thompson, from what I remember, he had himself, yeah, he had his ashes shot out of a cannon or something like that. So sometimes people do like to go out in sort of a blaze of glory. And for musicians like Lemmy and Ozzy, death was never going to be the end of the story. It's just another part of their performance, really. And somewhere out there, sealed in 10 empty iced tea cans, a little piece of Ozzy Osbourne might still be waiting for the encore. Maybe somebody will actually bring him back. They'll clone him, and wouldn't that be something? I do have to say, though, someone may have actually outdone Ozzy years before. This is reminiscent of an art piece called Artist Shit or Merda de Artista. It was a famous 1961 conceptual artwork by Italian artist Piero Manzoni. And yes, it also involved cans. Manzoni produced 90 small tin cans, each purportedly containing 30 grams of his own feces. Sealed and signed as well. The cans were sealed, labeled in 4 languages: Italian, English, German, and French, and hand signed by Manzoni. There's also a DNA link to this story. This Manzoni character designed these to be sold for their weight in gold, acting as a critique of the art market and the obsession with the artist's personhood. He presented them as containing his personal DNA or as a direct, intimate product of his body. It was also something you could display. While they were sold and are currently displayed in museums and private collections, sometimes in custom cases, they are, by design, not meant to be opened, leaving the exact nature of the contents for speculation and conceptual value. So, I think that person may have actually outdone Ozzy in a way. So, I mean, when it comes to this weird marketing of, you know, a person's bodily remnants contained in cans. I hate to say it, but I think this fellow may have outdone Ozzy on it. So, it complicates the story, but, that's one of the things I do on this podcast. I take your expectations and I kind of flip them on their head. And so, respect to Ozzy, and also this this artist who again is Piero Manzoni, because I guess in a sense they were trailblazers and they wanted to leave part of their legacy behind in a unique way.